In our panel today, in the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about improvisation in and across different art forms, and about the fact how also different art forms can influence each other, and how they can influence improv, and how improv can influence other art forms. And I have the pleasure of talking about this topic to three different panelists who are here today, which I hope are appearing now here. We've had a few technical problems, but I hope they are all here now. So our three panelists are, and we'll just do the magic, yes, Danielle Davarona from Austin, Texas. She's a professional artist and illustrator with experience in painting, singing, storyboard, and improv. And we have Rahel Otsa from Tallinn in Estonia, who is an improviser and improv teacher, one of the first improvisers in Estonia. And she's also the founder of Tilt, the Estonian Improv Festival. And we have Rita Xian from Virginia. And I'm not sure, she's had some technical problems, so I hope she is with us here and that she can hear us. She is a scientist and social dancer with a great deal of experience in Lindy Hop, which is a type of swing dance in which improvisation is very important. And so these are the three wonderful panelists that we have here today. You can see that we're going to talk about many different topics, and there will be questions also specifically tailored to each one of you, as well as questions that address all of you. And I would like to start with a very brief, just icebreaker question, which you can answer in one sentence each. And that's the question: let's imagine if you were cast on a desert island where you're going to spend the rest of your life. What do you need to bring with you in order to be able to express yourself creatively on that island? Okay, Danielle, I'll start with you. What would you bring to your desert island?
I love this question. I would probably bring some kind of adhesive, because I can cut or make anything else, but I need adhesive to stick it together.
Excellent, excellent. Rahel, what would you bring to your desert island?
I think I would go with a rope. Just because I've had the amazing possibility to try out improv on street and do a bit of a street theater, and kind of like, if I was there by myself, and I mean everything around me was there, but it would be cool to have this rope to make myself different imaginative rooms, for example, a stage, audience hall, everything.
Great, thanks. And Rita, can you hear us? Can you talk to us? We can't see you. That's too bad. I hope that someone is helping Rita and that she can still join us for later, and that at least she can hear us. But in that case, let's just move on. And I'd like to talk to each one of you briefly about your specific perspective on the topic. Danielle, you're an illustrator, and I'd be interested to hear from you. When you're working on an illustration project, do you ever draw on experience from other art forms, and how does that happen?
Yeah, so I am a storyboard editor right now, and I come from a sign painter background. So I have a lot of experience with like drafting and creating patterns or concepts that have a really fleshed out message. And something that's really interesting is I use improv actively as a storyboard editor, because when certain poses need motion or weight, I have to act it out and sort of use my to figure out how to translate the look of something from real life on to paper. So it's really fun to get influenced by not only my other art past, but by improv itself as well.
Thank you. So, Rahel, and by the way, for the audience, if you have questions or comments, if you want to know more about one of the answers, follow-up questions, just write them in the chat or in the Q&A section, and then we will read them out and get to them later on. So, Rahel, you're an improviser with an interest in other art forms as well. From your perspective, how would you say is improv different from other art forms? What distinguishes improv from other art forms?
Well, I think it is what we all know there to be, the energy of the moment, if done well, the theater magic that happens in front of your eyes. I mean, in other art forms, you may take time to craft whatever you're creating, but here we are. I mean, again, but then we go into jazz and it's already there. So I wouldn't say it's like completely unique. You can improvise in dance, music, you can just paint something, improvise painting. But the way that we see improv now, I think that's the theatrical energy that we bring to the audience, to the people participating in this art as the audience, but also while being in it. I think that's maybe one of the things.
Thanks. I would love to have Rita on board now, but I'll just have to check quickly in the chat because I cannot listen to you and also read the chat. I think Rita still cannot hear us really. That's too bad, but I think we'll just have to continue then with the other questions. Yeah, she can't hear us. Okay, we'll just continue for the moment and hope that she will still be able to join us. So if you think about improvisation, and I don't mean improv just in a narrow sense, but improvisation, we can find that in many different art forms in different ways. And what would you say, both of you, what is crucial for making improvisation work? What is needed?
Good. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think passion. I think if you do anything with real kind of wanting to do it, dedication, wanting to listen to your partners, what's happening around you in the scene, I think that is what makes the difference in I wouldn't say in a good and a bad show, but kind of like the way we do improv.
I appreciate that answer too. I just want to add confidence, because I think if you go in understanding that there is no failure in improv and you just do whatever your ideas are confidently, then you can look back on your show and, you know, positive or negative, you did whatever you did with conviction. And I think that's really important.
And Danielle, just following up on what you said before, you talked about how you bring, how you draw on improv when you do storyboarding, for instance. Does it also work the other way around? What do you bring into improv from your other experiences in other art forms? And I mean, there is more than just the storyboarding, right? So you also do singing and so on. So how do you draw on all that when you do improv?
Those other artistic expressions give me a really interesting, I'm going to call it like a bird's eye view or an aerial perspective of shows. Whenever I look at paintings or whenever I look at creating songs or whatever, a lot of it is very using parts of what I know to make a whole and getting inspired by lots of different things. And so I think improv allows art to kind of create a bubble around itself, and you can get inspired by everything in its little bubble. Does that make sense?
Sure. Where do you see kind of potentials, Rahel, for improv to integrate other art forms?
It's going to be a very lazy answer, but I'd say everywhere. I mean, I think for me, one of the reasons that I love improv is we're constantly inventing. We're kind of creating new things on stage because they've never been there before. And I think what we could do is also be more inventive in the ways, in the formats and in the things that we do. That is why the topic of art cross-pollination is kind of intriguing for me or important for me. Because, I mean, yes, you can take anything and start from it. I mean, there was a show today, two women, where they started with characters that have already put out there, or like, I mean, anything. I think for me, what really kind of, I don't know, cracked the ice was getting to try out site-specific improv. So improv done in a real location, and I did have the honor to try it out in another Ohana meeting, the European improvisers group that I belong to, and someone kind of introduced the idea, and I realized that when we use what we already have around us, then it makes things so much easier for us and for the audience and everyone. I mean, it's if we talk about theater, theater uses all arts, classical theater. I mean, we have decorations, we have costumes, makeup, we have, you put a lot of music there. It's a musical, dances, like we use everything that is there. But then we kind of, when we start doing improv, we often strip it from everything. We're just, here's a black box and two chairs, and that's all we need. And it may also bring out very cool performances and things. And two chairs is one of my favorite formats ever. And kind of like, I love the sort of a minimalism maybe in it. But also, I think it's good to remind ourselves that all the other things around us are also there. Or if you see a genre show that also has costumes, or like these small things can help us grow on stage. And I think we could be trying them out more.
Danielle, you seem you agreed very, very strongly with this, right? So do you want to add something to that or respond to this?
No, I'm just in full agreement. I think it's really interesting to watch improv, grow from where it's at in its very like humble and amazing state, and then watching it turn into other things with genres or added elements. I think the only thing that's unique that I would add is Zoomprov, and doing improv online has offered new and unique opportunities to become even more costumed or even more creative in certain ways, because you're allowed to use as many creative elements as you have at your disposal that you wouldn't necessarily get to add. I'm a professional face painter as well, and so I get to do face paint stuff for shows now that I would normally never get to do because that's just not timely for a regular improv show. But with the extra time that we have to prep for things now and not having to commute to the stage as much, I have extra time to do certain things, and it's really fun to get to bring that whimsy to the improv stage for the first time.
Can I just also add to it just something that I remember? I think there was a performance, I think in the Netherlands, a zombie show where they had a makeup artist who was gradually making all the people that became zombies and became more dead. Like when they went off stage, then they became more paler, and when they came back. So I didn't see the show, but I've heard about it. Maybe someone who's watching us knows more about it. But I mean, that must have been a very cool experience for the audience also.
Yeah, do any of you have any further experiences with bringing other art forms into improv, and or also ideas for what you would like to try out in that direction? What we could experiment with?
Another thing I've heard of, but haven't managed to see myself, was, I know there was a show of improv combined with opera, which first I was like, wait, what? Because for me, these are like, if we talk about theater world, these are the most different points in theater, I think, also in terms of production and everything. So, yeah, I mean, everything.
Oh my gosh, if you like improv and opera, you should check out the troupe Rook. They're an amazing troupe here out of Austin with 3 amazing operatic musicians, and they've been doing that particular troupe for a couple years now, so they're very well trained. Highly recommend. That's so fun. I would say right now I'm focused on figuring out new ways to combine physical art and improv. So something that I did last year that I would love to explore more is creating live art during theater performances and then having a physical representation of the show by the time the show is over. I did that for a 60s inspired pajama party improv show, and it was really cool to have like an advertisement for the fake company that they came up with by the time the show was over. It was really fun. So I want to find new ways to combine art and improv and have them be like a collaborative experience in the moment that people can share.
I think also maybe sometime in the morning there was a very cool panel discussion about how to make it in Zoom, led by Balori, and they were also talking about all the snap cameras and things that you can use. So things you're gonna use it now, yes. So actually, like being on Zoom has opened us a few things, having the virtual backgrounds or filters or whatever. So there's we already have we think we have less, but we actually have more, kind of. In some ways, we have more things to work with. Beautiful.
Very nice. Yeah, I would like to move back to something that we briefly talked about at the beginning, and about improvisation in an abstract way, and not just talking about improv, but as part of creating art. So in my understanding, at least, I understand improvisation as the spontaneous creation of something without editing it, without censoring it, just creating it and then see what happens, perhaps also collaboratively. We could talk about that. I think there are different understandings there. But one of the things that I'm personally very interested in is to see how does this process of improvisation vary across different art forms. So personally, I don't have a lot of knowledge about music, but I'm very interested in, for instance, understanding more about what do musicians do when they improvise together, and the same thing about other art forms. So Rita, for instance, would have told us a lot about improvisation in dance, so it's a shame that she's not here, but perhaps you could also add something. I mean, you both have experience with other art forms as well, or perhaps you also happen to have someone in the audience who is an expert on improvisation in music and who could just spontaneously jump in and share their experiences. If that's the case, then please write in the chat, or also if you have other questions in the chat, because that's something that I would like to explore a bit further. Any thoughts from your side on that? Parallels and differences of improvisation across different art forms.
I think something that is really cool about art, like music and improv specifically, is there's a lot of different skeletons that are set up in music that are structured to give you support in order to create good improv. For example, an AABA rhyme scheme is something that you can use to look like an absolute master at musical improv, without really doing a ton of extra work in order to get there. As long as you can keep that rhyme scheme, then you're going to create something that looks cohesive and sounds refined. And the more practice that you get at those things, and the more you learn about different skeletons and different structures you can use to build off of, then the better your musical experience is going to come across. And then once you have those foundations, you can use things like harmonizing or different types of musicality in order to create different types of musical environments for yourself and your actors to be part of.
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot to say about it. I think it's just, again, the tools that we use. So, like when we are doing music, I'd say we mostly focus on sound. So, but if I'm improvising, I'm creating a character, I'm trying to sound good, and then I'm trying to look something, to have a different body posture or whatever that is kind of creating the character. And then I'm trying to be the playwright at the same time, figuring out again what's happening. So that's kind of what I think maybe slightly differs in improv is just the amount of processes we have in our heads at a time to kind of like to make it happen.
That's so true. You're wearing every hat when you're in an improv scene. You're the director, the actor, the like the producer, all of the things.
Yeah, but and it's kind of funny because we often, I mean, the audience only sees the actors in us. So we also maybe think of ourselves only as actors, but we kind of even don't think of the number of hats that we have, and then we don't also maybe pay attention to it. Yeah, it's as I said before, like theater is such a collaborative art, mixing everything in it. So it's a tough job.
Mm-hmm. And what you said, I think this multiple hats that one wears, that's the case for all forms of collaborative improvisation, right? So that's, if it's created in the moment, you're automatically take on different roles. And when I talked to Rita before this panel to just exchange ideas, and the way in which she described Lindy Hop and dancing there, just it was so similar to describing what happens when we do improv. So she used the same vocabulary that I would use to talk about improvised scenes. She said that you have to listen to your partner to understand how they react, to give them space to move, to lead, and to find this balance between patterns that we all know, that we can use to orient ourselves, structures in one way or another, and variation within these patterns, which is the improvisation, right, where you then vary something, that you respond to the music, for instance, in dancing, so to the situation, to what happens there, and you respond to that spontaneously and adjust your dance to that. And she talked a lot about the kind of how interesting it is to dance with different partners, and to realize that the dance is completely different with each partner, and at the same time the fact that everyone around the world knows some types of Lindy Hop dances, so you can go wherever, and even without knowing the language, you have this common language of the dance where you can move and together and dance together. And yeah, that's just, it struck me listening to that it really sounds very interesting to improv, very similar to improv and what we do as well, and that there is a lot of potential there for cross art activities, because we know the same principles from these different art forms, just a matter of combining them and seeing what kind of potential there is in this combination.
And I think that is slightly sad that, I don't know, I'm speaking from my own backyard, but I don't think that improvisers tend to see it that way or tend to look for the connection as much. I don't know, so that improvisers would be going to take improvised dance classes, for example. So I'm sure they're offered everywhere, but kind of like you don't have to do the improvised dance because of that, just to learn how that discipline works and what can we kind of take from there, or with music or anything kind of. I think there is definitely more room here for us to. I mean, improv. Again, it was said somewhere before. It's a bit of a loaded term. Sometimes people think that if something's improvised, that it's kind of like done just so. I mean, it's not a quality thing. If you've kind of prepared it for months, then that must be a good thing. But if you're just improvising, then that's just, I mean, like a children's play. And kind of, jazz has done kind of the same thing as we've been talking. So kind of like it's we could be instead supporting each other and kind of lifting each other up also across these fields, instead of saying this is what I do and that's it. This is my play field.
And why do you think that's the case, that there is not more curiosity by improvisers to transgress boundaries into other art forms?
I think there's like a bunch of reasons. Because human beings are by nature lazy. And I mean, if you've learned short form games that make the audience laugh and it works, why should you bother doing anything else at all? And I mean, if it works for you and it works for the audience, I'm not judging anyone. But yeah, I think it's also to do with many of us doing it as a voluntary work. So kind of the amount of energy and time we have to put in it is already limited. We don't have so many people in the field who would be getting paid for this, and so that they would also so that they would have the time and energy to invest in creating more bridges across things and learning about new things. I just have to say, so I was listening to the panel before and listening to Daniela speaking about everything she knows about the linguistical side of improv and how we use words. And I'm like, whoa, that's a brain I very much want to know more of. So I'm very happy that there are people who really kind of either in universities or just by their own time take the possibility to kind of, this interests me, I'm gonna dive in further, instead of it's cool, it interests me, but I don't have time. And that is a very valid reason. We don't have much time.
Absolutely, yeah. I fully agree. I think the lack of also official funding of improv is one important reason for its difficulty to gain a profile of being taken seriously as an art form, because it's just, improvisers always have to strike this balance of making it appeal to a large audience and then going more onto the entertainment side of things, because that's where you can make money, because there is not much financial support for just expanding the boundaries of improv, right? How would you do that? Danielle, have you ever approached an improv group suggesting to them to experiment with face painting and illustrations and singing? And if yes, what was their reaction?
Not directly with face painting exactly. I've led improvisers in artistic classes and done some creative based learning through improv. So I taught these, I guess you would call them like short form drawing games that are improv based. And people were really receptive to them. I think a lot of people come at me whenever I'm drawing and their first reaction is usually something along the lines of, wow, that's amazing. I couldn't do that. I can't even draw a stick figure. I'm sure you've all heard or said something similar before. And stick figures are actually really hard to draw. So I think it's sort of unfair to start at something that is really actually fairly difficult and try to judge yourself based on that. And so teaching people the same principles of improv through an artistic medium like drawing Something like, leaving judgment at the door, allowing yourself to be in the moment, letting whatever comes up come up, and then enhancing that with your own abilities and experience. These things translate really well to artistic mediums, and people tend to be less bashful if you give them a safe space to create these opportunities and mistakes together. And I think improv does a really great job at that. So even though it is really different to y'all's experience, I think, at least from the things that I've been able to do, I find a lot of people and a lot of improvisers that I know very willing to put themselves out on different branches and experience different creative outlets, because improv gives them the foundation to translate it into learning, instead of feeling like they're not going to stick with it forever or whatever. They can kind of glean whatever lessons they want and decide whether they want to wade in that experience like a kiddie pool, or, like you were saying, make that experience something where you go deep down the well and you create a much deeper, longer lasting experience with that art form.
I mean, again, we are artists, so kind of like we should be creating. I mean, we're creating new things anyway, but we could be doing more of that. And I remembered another example. Years ago, the troupe they used to have, we did a collaboration performance with a choir, and it was quite fun because, like, for a choir to function, they need to rehearse what they're going to do a lot. And then we came in with, we don't want to know what you're doing there, because that is going to, like, we don't want to do the rehearsals, because that is going to make it difficult for us to do the performance. So I think we ended up just having maybe 2 or 3 run-throughs before we did the performances, because, and I mean, the name of, I mean, the topic of it was the game, so it was kind of broad enough for us to do. But yeah, it was very fun to kind of trying to mix something that needs to be very kind of rehearsed, and then something that is improvised.
Oh, that's interesting that you brought that up too. That reminded me of something I did this summer. It's a really great collaborative experience called Sound Worlds, but live musicians, artistic performers, dancers, and improvisers all get together. It's organized by Kenzie Slotto, and they all improvise their own pieces all together to create like a full improvised experience. So all the musicians improvise, all the actors improvise. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen, because normally those things take a lot of rehearsal, but the only kind of rehearsal they get is the years of experience they've had before. They come to every performance brand new, so it's really fun.
I'm getting shivers from listening to this. Yes.
If you two had unlimited resources, what kind of cross art project would you engage in? What would you do?
I'm gonna go back to the site-specific things. Just kind of, I mean, a few summers ago, again with Ohana, we did a site-specific show at a previous gunpowder factory in Slovenia. So that was a very cool place, and definitely very inspiring. But I mean, regularly the places that we use are empty, is what I'm trying to say. Like, that place wasn't empty. It had history, and also because the people left from there, like just like one day they left. So there were even like papers or mobile phones or whatever. There were like things there. But I'd like to, I don't know, go to a big, either a, I don't know, a corporate building or a castle or whatever, kind of like to really play with what I have around me. I think that would be a project. So if suspicious donor right now is listening here, so kind of like that is what I'd done for.
Yeah, we'll post your account number later on in the chat, so any donors, just send your money there. I'm sure it will be an amazing project to see that. Danielle, what would you do?
It would have to be something along the lines of live art or live installation experiences. I think there's a really cool magic to performing something in the now and then having it speak to audiences much longer after the performance is done. So having a performance that maybe, like, for example, you hang tiny origami birds in like a dance procession, and then after the performance is over, people can walk through the birds and experience the piece even though the performance is no longer happening. I think things like that create a whimsy and a wonder and a hunger for more of that. And so I think those kind of projects breathe air and life into improv and other art forms and give them longevity that they don't normally have.
I'd like to open the floor to the audience who is there, whether there are any questions from you which you would like to ask our panelists. Watching the space, whether anything pops up. Ah, yeah. Okay. Okay, I'll read it out so that everyone can hear also on the recording. Improv is both the process and the result at the same time. This is one of the things that lets the audience connect with the art. It's rare to see the process behind a finished painting hanging on a wall, but I can only assume the artist somehow wants to connect their art with an audience in a similar way. It will be interesting to see where the breaking point is for this when it comes to practicality. Okay, it's a comment more than a question, but perhaps it creates a response from you as well. I must say, my spontaneous response, I remember a video that I saw a long time ago at school about the Picasso painting that was produced and kind of drawn over and over again, and all these pictures that disappeared, and in the end you had something completely different there that had nothing to do with the first picture that was originally on the canvas, which was really fascinating to watch this process. And the fact that I can still remember that, one of the very few art sessions, I guess, that I can still remember from school, means that there is this fascination with the process, right? So with observing not just how something is created, but also the fact that it's disappearing again immediately. It's not permanent, which I guess is also something that all forms of improvisation have in common.
I think it maybe also depends a bit how we present the art to the audience. Years ago, I was in Berlin at a gallery, and there were sculptures there. And a group of school students were tasked to make photos of the light and the shadow of the sculptures. So instead of kind of just saying, hey, here's a painting, watch it, have an opinion about it and move on. So like the teacher there had found a way for the students to actually actively communicate and have like make something new out of it, actually. So kind of maybe it's not only about the art itself, but just how we right now show it to the audience. And in some ways it's understandable, because I mean improv is so vulnerable, because we are out there making mistakes, but people don't like to be vulnerable, and it's so much more of a sure thing to just put out there something that is already done, and then either enjoy the ovations or kind of hide yourself from the critiques. So maybe that's a challenge in itself for the other art forms there.
And see, for me, I think like, I admire artists and improvisers of every discipline because I think it's their job to be vulnerable and to sort of be masters of the heart and to be prepared to put different parts of themselves on display for people so that they get that wide audience connection and vulnerability. I used to create live painted murals. We would start them at 6 p.m. and they were 4 by 8 feet in diameter, and we would have 6 hours to finish them. So we would go from 6 p.m. to midnight and then party until 2 a.m. at this location. But it was really great because, like you said, people are fascinated by the process, and coming to a paint session with, you know, at most like a reference image to sort of create this masterpiece in 6 hours or less and have it be ready to be sold by the time the evening is over was really, really interesting. And of course, too, you have people of the observing party that are either really taken aback by what they're seeing and very in awe of the process. People that are really invested in the process but have no process of their own, and so those tend to be the people that, but they purchase it preemptively so that they can give you their opinion and so that you can incorporate their opinion live into the piece that you're creating. So it you know, it's really interesting to watch the level of impact people want to have on your improvised ideas and thoughts. And like you said too, I think for me, learning to paint murals taught me that all art can be ephemeral, and that even if you think a piece is finished, you can go back and paint over it. You can always revisit ideas, and I think that was something that I didn't know as well before, but improv and live painting taught me that, you know, you can always go back, you can edit.
Very nice thoughts to take away from this. We're coming to the end of this panel, and I would just like to ask you for a brief final statement on this topic. If you could formulate a wish for where improv is heading in the future with respect to this topic that we just discussed, what would your wish be? Where would you see improv or improvisation going? Danielle, would you like to start?
I have been really moved by how ambitious online improv has become, and I hope that we take the hunger and the progress that we've made for online improv and having the ability to cross-pollinate not only with other art forms but other cultures, and take that into our new improv experience.
I'm going to repeat what I already said about us being inventors. I think, I mean, it would take a lot of courage for sure, but I'd love to have more people just trying out different formats. Maybe they suck badly. Maybe they're like, but I mean, that is what art is. Some things kind of work for you and some things don't, and some things speak to you and some things don't. And kind of like just go out there and try a lot of different things and then see what comes out from there. So just like throw yourself into it.
Great. So thank you very much for coming here today. Is there anything that people who are interested in your work and what you do, where they can find out more about what you do, where they can follow you, contact you?
Well, I've got a Facebook page. Please like it. It's always missing more likes. Called Improvisation. I'm sure you'll find my name through my name it. And one thing that I'm really proud of is that the festival that I used to organize without the pandemic, we also have video recordings of the performances from past maybe 3, 4, even 5 years. So, and as I've kind of taken the pride for us to really have different sort of improv shown there, also gibberish improv or a solo improv musical or improvised Tarantino, watch it, so cool. Anyway, So that's a very good kind of archive or a source for future, I think. So I think it's something that that maybe might interest you. So Tilt Improv Festival, you can find from the YouTube the channel. I think everything, all these things are also on the Creative Approach website.
Great. Danielle, where can people find out more about what you do and get in touch
if
with
you want to find out more about my art, then please feel free to find me on Instagram at Danielle_da_Verona. And if you want to see more of my improv and watch or participate in shows I'm directing or performing in, then go to thehideouttheater.com.